Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I have a very serious question to ask all of you. What musical instrument is it that encourages us to go fishing? It is a castanet. Okay, I have one more serious question for you. What is the difference between a book and a talkative boar? You can shut up the book. Okay, I promise it's going to get better from here. The, I wanted to start the night off with a little bit of lightness to just show that we're going to have some fun, hopefully learn something together and engage. Thank you so much for being here for this incredibly important topic. The title of our discussion and presentation this evening is Pathways, Fundamentals, and Open Discussion. The event format, we talked about it a little bit in the introduction. We'll just reiterate a little bit here. Is the first part is going to be sort of about the fundamentals. And then next will be a brief question and answer period on the slides. And then finally, the value proposition that I wanted to put out for participants is to have an open discussion on any topic and to just give a little bit of explanation. For the Q&A, I'll be answering those questions. But then for the open discussion, I'll be changing my hat and basically be a facilitator because we want to elicit your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings, and then respond to one another. Unless you have a question for me particularly, it will not be me answering that question, but yet facilitating the discussion. I hope that that's clear, and we'll be reiterating some of this information as we go. What are the fundamentals in this case? First of all, there's the technical, and it's specifically designed for that new Toastmaster that is not yet familiar with how to use Pathways in Basecamp, or maybe for that person wanting to help a fellow Toastmaster with those fundamentals, as I call them, the beginning fundamentals. And then part two, I think this is not talked about enough, and I really wanted to include this in the concept of fundamentals, those things that are really most important about a given topic, and that is the value proposition. Why, in fact, would we want to be using Pathways in Basecamp? And I'm going to try and answer a few of those questions, or at least start that dialogue. The topics we're going to be discussing for part one, the technical aspect. The first one is going to be logging into Pathways. And please bear with me if this is review, and I hope that you can utilize some of this information to help others, if in fact it is review for you. And I want to follow through with my word on providing the fundamentals for both of these aspects. And this is being recorded, as our Toastmaster had mentioned, so that any, not only discussion that we do later, as well as the slideshow, it's all being recorded for posterity. I'm hoping people can continue to learn from this. Secondly, we're going to talk about completing a project as fundamental, then evaluation forms, and how to get around in Pathways and Basecamp navigation. Let's talk briefly about a couple of definitions. The first question I'm going to really bring to our attention is, what is Pathways? Pathways is the main Toastmasters International learning curriculum. Okay, well then what is Basecamp? Aren't they the same thing? Well, not quite. The definition of Basecamp, as I understand it, is that it's the online platform that Pathways uses. So Pathways is the curriculum. Basecamp is the online platform that Pathways uses. What is a project? A project is very similar to what, if you have been in Toastmasters for a while, it's just doing one of your speeches in your former manuals. And really what this amounts to is it includes the speech or speeches, if there are multiple, and any other tasks required for completion and credit. So very similar to just one of the old speeches in the old manuals. And for those that are new to Toastmasters, I hope that this provides at least a framework for these three important definitions that can really help you get further down the road with clarity, is my intent. On that first topic, I really want to put this out there. Until a member enrolls in Pathways, they are locked out of Toastmasters education. Think about this. you attend college or you attend school and you say, oh, great, I'm going to attend, but I don't want to use the curriculum. They'd say, okay, well, I hope you enjoy the coffee, but I'm not sure what we're going to be doing together, since the curriculum is in fact what provides the learning environment. But the good news is when a member does enroll in Pathways, and it doesn't take long at all, you have this entire Toastmasters curriculum now open to that member. I had a series of questions come in from people that I was working with Pathways, questions that they had, suggestions. And one I thought was great. It was, how do I log into Pathways anyway? We're talking about logging into all these things. How do I do it? So this is how we do it. It's going to be basic, but I hope that this is there for anybody that could use this as a review. So we go to toastmasters.org and then click on login as those red arrows indicate. So from here, once you've done that, you click on member ID or email, type in your password, then click login. And once you have done this, you will see the option of Pathways, where that red arrow is. You want to click on that, since in fact we are logging into Pathways Basecamp. Once you've done that, then you will see this open up, this option. You press Go to Basecamp. And that brings you a little further down the screen. As you scroll down, you'll see this option. You'll see Go to Basecamp. You simply click on that. And congratulations, you are now logged into Basecamp. Give yourselves a hand. And if you've already logged in 100 times, well, this is your 101st time. Excellent. If it's your first time, congratulations. So that's what Basecamp looks like at the home screen. Next question I thought was really good from another member. I just gave a speech. Someone in the club evaluated it. What am I supposed to do to get credit for it and buy Pathways? Well, really, what that amounts to is, how do I complete a project? And I think that this was such a great question, and perhaps one of the most important questions, the fundamental questions that you can explore and clarify. So we're going to do that. All that work we just did to learn how to log into Pathways Basecamp, here you are at the home screen. Now you're going to click on Paths and Learning. This is where the curriculum takes place. Just like it's notated there, it says Open Curriculum. So you can think of this as a book. So what do we need to do to get the material understood with a book? We need to first open the book, or in this case, open the curriculum. Once you open that curriculum, you can see on the left, you've got all of your levels available. On the right would be sort of one of the specific levels. And in this case, we're talking about level 1. And we want to explore the icebreaker. If this is maybe someone's first speech, this is often the first speech that a member would give. So we would click on launch. So we want to launch the icebreaker. So we click on that. Once that occurs, that launches the project. So this is called a project window. And of course, looking at all this at first, it can look a little bit like, well, what do I do? Really, there's only 4 things that you need to know about, not just for the icebreaker, but actually for every project window within Pathways that you encounter. The top arrow refers to what we call a chevron, or just an arrow button off to the left, as it indicates that returns you to the previous page of the project. And then just to the right, you advance to the next page in the project. Then a little bit lower, you can see that sort of back and next. That would be if there's additional information on this slide within the project window, you would just simply click on next, next, next until it appears that that was done. And then finally, there could be additional information we need to know about just on the right there at the bottom, just called directions. You would click on directions and you'll find that information right there. There's very little you actually end up really needing to know. I consider these 4 of the huge fundamentals to navigate not just the icebreaker, but any project window in all of Pathways and Basecamp. There are only two things, in my opinion, that you really need to know about to complete a project. Now, it's not to say that you shouldn't go through every single one of these: navigation, introduction, your assignment, assess your skills before, all of these things. But I'm going to tell you in a causal relationship. In other words, how do I get from not having completed in Basecamp to having been completed in Basecamp? I think the two essentials are that you need to click on what's called your evaluation. That's your evaluation form. And you want to give this to your evaluator. That will allow them to evaluate your speech within this project. Now you might be looking at this evaluation resource. This opens up once you've clicked on your evaluation. What is this evaluation resource? That's just your evaluation form. That's all it is. So you click on that and it allows the individual to look at the criteria needed, fill it out, and send it back to you. We're going to be talking more about how to deal with these evaluation forms, but this is just letting you know the two things that are needed to complete a project. So that really kind of squares away evaluation. And then finally, what is it that really knocks it over into that completed status? And it's you click on assess your skills after. That is actually what does the completion. You will come to this sort of little mini survey. In this case, the first question for the icebreaker, it's asking us, I am confident and calm when speaking in front of groups. You have a 1 to 5 scale that you can then answer for that. And you can see the back and the next. You keep doing next, next, next until it's completed. Finally, once you've done that, if you've done a before as well as an after, you'll see that sort of comparison numbers there and the statement of where you're at right now, the results, if you will, of your assess your skills after. And then make sure to keep doing that next, next, next. And once you have done that, you will see the screen. It's congratulations, you have completed this project and now ready to advance to your next information. So that is really all it is. And not only does this work for the icebreaker, but in the interest of the fundamentals, I like to think of this concept as 80-20 principle. In other words, it's my view that 20% of tasks within Pathways and Basecamp provide 80% of the value. This is one of those tasks. When you learn how to do it the icebreaker, you know how to do it with every project within Pathways and Basecamp. And then you'll know that you have completed it because you can see that circle. You get that check mark next to the icebreaker. It shows that it has been, in fact, completed. A little bit about evaluation forms. I seem to be taking some strong stands. It's not my intent. I just want to share this with you. But in my view, without using the evaluation forms, it can be super fun to get together. But a member is not learning in the Toastmasters curriculum for some of the reasons that we discussed. But let's put it the positives. Evaluations, it has been said, is the crux within Toastmasters. In other words, the most important part of Toastmasters, the critical for learning within the Toastmasters curriculum. So use those evaluation forms, get access to the curriculum would be one way to approach your education in Toastmasters. Third and final question, where do I find the evaluation forms? We've already talked about one of those places within your project or project window. We just discussed that in a little bit of detail. The other one I want to tell you about is a place, it's called the Speech Evaluations tab. We're going to touch on that now. That's a really great place to know about. We're also going to talk about how to fill out the evaluation forms and save them. And I just want to quickly put this out there. It's very important that a member knows that you are not required to upload or even save these evaluations, these PDFs. You certainly can, and I save all of mine. But I've definitely run across clubs that were under the impression that they had to upload their evaluation forms to the cloud within Pathways Basecamp. That is simply not the case. I actually do not use that functionality. I think my organization is a little bit better than that, and I don't prefer to use it, although if someone really wants to use it, they can, but it is not required. Please understand that if you're looking to remove the amount of tasks that need to be done in this fundamental way, that's something that you can just simply remove if members are not wanting to do that or struggling with it. Here's within the project window as mentioned, just like we talked about a moment ago. And there's the evaluation resource. Now this other place, speech evaluations, you can see that tab. This is found at the home screen within your Pathways Basecamp. That was the first thing we learned how to do. From the home screen, you can simply click on speech evaluations, and this is super cool. I use it all the time. And this includes, once you click on that, you'll scroll down a bit and you'll see that it includes every evaluation form within all 11 paths. Every single project is in here for you to access. It is extremely handy. Another technical thing, if this is too technical, just leave it behind. It's not necessary, but I will say this. Sometimes within the project window, you download an evaluation form and it is not fillable immediately. You would sort of have to print it out and write in there. If you do run into that issue, all of these are giving you that ability to have a fillable PDF, although most of the PDFs are fillable even in the project windows. We talked about really how to save them, how to fill these out. The thing I want to mention, I was using Firefox, so you might just notice that there's sort of a red arrow to the download button. It can be in different places depending on the browser you're using, but you want to download it. If you don't download it and you try to access it while it's still in Basecamp, you will not be able to actually save it. So I've had people do that. They've intended to fill out this great evaluation for me, and then they sent me a blank form because they didn't know this. So you want to download that, and then you would fill in what's necessary: the member name, evaluator, date, the speech title, and a little further down there's some numeric information that you can also add in there. And please understand, as we just mentioned, it will not save the data unless you now save this downloaded file that you just accessed, or you could just print it directly, one or the other. So you either would need to save it or print it. Getting around in Basecamp. Let's talk about that briefly. I think these are really the top 4 things a person needs to know about. The first is the fast access toolbar within a project. We've actually already seen that, but I'm just going to make it now explicit for you in a moment. And then these others are from the home screen in Basecamp, the first thing that we did. So we need to know about the home tab, the paths and learning tab, and then finally the tutorials and resources tab. So that arrow there, you might have noticed where it says select to move to another section. That's where you found your evaluation as well as assess your skills after and all those other things. You can get anywhere, anytime in a project window from what I'm calling the fast access toolbar. Why do I call it that? Because you can immediately get to where you're going fast. Access toolbar. In other words, these are the tools that you would utilize. So I call it a fast access toolbar. From the Pathways Basecamp home screen, there are the 3 tabs we talked about. There's the home screen, which you're at, and then Paths in Learning. You can click on it there as well. You can see that's the first thing that you can click on just below that as well. But it's one of the tabs that no matter what you're doing, wherever you're at, you can click on Home, Paths in Learning, Tutorials and Resources at any time. I'm going to personally recommend that you may decide to leave out the tutorials and resources if in fact you do have a hard time getting around within Basecamp, because I've definitely heard people, and even when I was beginning as well, it was hard to sort of get back to where I was. So you could leave that out, maybe look for other ways to learn some of this material. Although if you're courageous and just curious, by all means do that. But home and paths in learning, they're going to be used all the time. Once you get into paths in learning, there's a couple of basic terms. First one is open curriculum. We talked about that. That's kind of like opening the book. Secondly, you're going to see a term. We're going to show you this in a moment. It's called activate. That's the first time you ever access your project. Sort of engages it, ready for action. And then launch is actually what starts the project. So here's that open curriculum you've already seen. At the time I was in my leadership development path. So I would open that book or open the curriculum to get in there. Within the leadership development path, you will see all these options for all these levels. In this case, I was looking at the project Write a Compelling Blog, but I hadn't done anything with it, so it needed to be engaged. So I clicked on Activate, and then finally you can see it's now given the option to launch it, and then I can launch it just like we did with the icebreaker a moment ago. The value proposition in Pathways and Basecamp, I think this is really important. I just want to start the conversation with you on this. Some of the key concepts are what I'm going to share with you. And this is really going to be a bit anecdotal, but I hope helpful for you. I'm describing it from my personal experience. And I look forward to hearing some of your experiences if, in fact, you would like to share them with us in the discussion later. First of all, I think this was the big one. This was the one that I had the biggest confusion with, which is the Toastmasters learning model. How are we supposed to learn in this? Is it sort of that conventional, you buy a book, you read it, and then maybe you take action with the book? But what I found super interesting is in Toastmasters, when I was doing the high performance leadership, what came up within there was that they were talking about a model within Toastmasters that actually is a little bit counterintuitive, which is do, learn, and teach. And that's a brain twister. Like, well, how do you start doing it before you've learned about it? And that's the point. I think that this is quite ingenious. It actually is what I call a contextual process learning model. In other words, you find things that you're already doing in your life that matter to you, and you look for a project that fits into that. The context is so important. It is not a passive process. It's not like the conventional, in my view, my experience, right? This is what I was really confused about. That you read a book and you take action. But I think in that model, why would you even throw in the word teach? It just doesn't even make any sense for that sort of way of looking at things. But in Toastmasters, which is inherently a community experience, I love this. We have so much variety of interests, of activities. Again, start doing it, or take what you're already doing, pick a path that applies to that, learn about it in your area that you're already interested in. And then if you are someone that likes to share, then you certainly could teach what you have learned. What's the bottom line? You are working on things that matter to you, learning about it, and it's a safe place to fail. That is so powerful. This is offered no place else that I know about. There are workplaces that offer training, but let's face it, your job might be on the line if you fail in those cases. In Toastmasters, I can tell you from experience, I have experimented with that failure. And thankfully, people are generally pretty supportive, and you pick up the pieces and start it all over again. And we all learn together. 3 areas that I have found anyway, and I think that these 3 areas end up extending to every aspect of employment that you could possibly think of, and perhaps every area of life. Just my opinion, I'll let you decide. But public speaking, we learn to speak clearly and confidently about things that matter to us, hopefully, in this do, learn, teach model. Develop gestures and stage movement. Even online, we can bring our gestures into the camera when we want to emphasize a point, or stage movement. If I want to give you a little bit of energy break, I can sort of sit back a little bit and say, what do you think? And then I can come back from my main point. That is a type of stage movement, even within Zoom. And the bottom line is you want to connect with your audience. Like, if you don't have an audience that is aware of what you're speaking about and you care about the same things, it's a bit pointless to try to give that. So let's put it in the positive. In Toastmasters, we learn to connect with an audience in public speaking. Communication, whether you give presentations or not, I think most of us would agree that we do communicate with people. And in Toastmasters, and again, all of this is specifically within the Pathways curriculum, we learn and understand effective and sort of supportive feedback and the role in that in communication. Secondly, we develop listening skills. There's a reason that we have one mouth and two ears. And I don't know about you, but myself, I have 1,000 things going on in my head at all times. And then sometimes I just remember that and I just go, oh, and I just get a little button and try to put it there so I can be a better listener. Finally, we learn about different communication and leadership styles. This, I think, is really important because we don't all think the same way, but yet I think many of us would agree that we have a lot to contribute, whether we're thinking the same way or if we're thinking in different ways. Leadership. You will definitely learn through collaboration, at least I certainly have. And that's how leadership kind of takes place in Toastmasters. Secondly, I have found it very useful to explore this concept of leading with a vision, with a mission, and with purpose. Again, working on those things that matter to actually have an effect beyond just one's own mind. And then you learn to plan fun, organized, meaningful events. So what is this learning playground, as one might call it, of pathways and Basecamp and all of these curriculums we've been discussing? First of all, there are 11 paths. Those are sort of the curricula. There are projects that relate to every single aspect that we talked about just now within all 5 levels of each path. And here they are. Their names are kind of self-explanatory. And these are different areas that you can look at, whether it be dynamic leadership, coaching, if you're someone that is wanting to connect with others and help them become an even better version of themselves. Leadership development, that was a super fun path for me. I had a chance to lead, but it wasn't so intense as some of the other ones. So the requirements were down a bit, but at the same time, I could develop as a leader. I'll let you explore some of the other material for this, but there's just a ton of wonderful material within these 11 paths. And then finally, this is sort of a breakdown of my leadership development path. Some of the aspects that we could look at. First of all, that icebreaker we talked about, that's just to get your first words in. You could be petrified of speaking in front of an audience. One of the best things we can do is talk about something we know something about and we care about. In other words, you share a little bit about yourself, things that you do know about, and it builds rapport, just like a great conversation. Other things, maybe you want to learn about using presentation software like that. This is how I learned. I had never used presentation software before doing a lot of these pathways webinars. So again, I'm happy to send, this is a PDF, it's called the Paths and Projects Catalog. It's for someone that wants to really take a deep dive into the curriculum. This can be a great PDF to explore. To recap, the first section, we talked about how to log into pathways, how to complete a project, the evaluation forms, where to find them, how to fill them out and save and print them, as well as how to get around in pathways and Basecamp. The recap on the second part, which is what I call the value proposition of pathways. The Toastmasters learning model, do, learn, teach. Please keep that in mind if you're anything like me. I didn't know that, but once I figured that out, I figured out, wow, this is a safe place to fail pursuing, my goals are your goals in your case. Next, the general topics, which maybe engulfs every employment opportunity as well as maybe every area of life, would be public speaking, communication, leadership. And the learning playground we discussed were these 11 paths, which is the curricula as all the projects within the 5 levels. At this point, I would love to go to 10 to 12 minutes of Q&A just to keep it kind of brief. And over to the chat master.
Harvey is the first one who raised his hand. Harvey?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We can't see you, but we hear you.
Okay. I'm just proposing, this is just, I talked to Dave Bones about this idea and I'm just proposing it. It's called pooled membership. And the concept, it would work probably under the district club coach. And when what it was, it's like you have a kind of a special category of membership. There'll be you've got a number of clubs that are underperforming, have a low membership. Well, that member will have can join maybe 2 to 5, 10, maybe whatever that number is, and be part of that club. And that'll bring its membership back up a little bit. And then that person can help that club with the roles if they're really low membership. And then, but they can't be a club officer or participate in contests. But that would keep them above at least 8 or above. Then it would help out the club whenever they need to fill roles because the
Harvey, Harvey, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to let you start asking your question to provide a little context. We're going to be doing an open discussion later. Right now, it's just Q&A on the slideshow. Sorry if I
Oh, I'm
wasn't clear
sorry.
about that.
I was mistaken. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Go
Great.
ahead and get somebody else. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Venkat had his hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Actually, I joined, this is the second session, second group discussion I joined. This is the second session. So last Tuesday, I joined my first Toastmaster session. This is the second session. I just want to know like how to start, like whether I can jump into the curriculum or is there any steps before I do some like kind of some of the sessions after that?
Excellent question. So you probably have not signed up in Basecamp yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just a member, so yeah, I don't know exactly about it. Yeah.
Wonderful. And do you have, I think I might have seen you, you're in a different district. Are you in District 7 or a different district?
I'm in District 9, I think. So I'm in West Beaverton.
Oh,
92, I think.
oh, Area 92. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you are local then. Wonderful. Okay. Now you're in West Beaverton. I will say this, there definitely is some really clear material. And the first thing that you could do is just like we did in the slideshow in the beginning, which is, log into your pathways and Basecamp. If you haven't signed up at all yet with Toastmasters International, there is sort of an initial procedure you need to do where you would basically, click, you would go to, like you were going to be logging into Toastmasters, but you will not. You essentially need to authenticate. Once you do that, then there is some ability to be walked through for choosing a path. There is a video on my playlist for a little bit more information about how to choose a path, but that is a little bit more of an involved topic. I'll tell you what, it's a little bit beyond the scope of exactly what I was wanting to put in the slideshow, but I would appreciate the honor to communicate with you later on this. I'm going to be making sure that my email is in the chat before we go. And then secondly, I have visited West Beaverton, and I believe they do have a mentor program, in which case they get every member started. Have they talked to you about this?
Yeah, they talked about it. They are going to assign a mentor. So I received the email about this session. I was just thinking it is related to this or not. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, no, that's an amazing question. I love it, and I may keep that particular perspective in mind literally from the beginning. You haven't even done anything with TI. I think that is great feedback for me. And here we are, I'm getting a chance to learn from your questions. So thank you for that. Let's, if we can, Venkat, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, you're correct.
Excellent, excellent. Let's get you hooked up with your mentor in your club. They're going to have a very particular way to get you started. And as well, I would be more than happy to augment any needs that you have beyond that. And I have a ton of thoughts as well as some material in my playlist you might be interested in to get further started.
So in that case, like this is a parallel track, I can continue what I'm doing, right?
Oh yeah,
With the club.
this is at this point, it's not an or situation, it's an and. In other words, you're doing all the right things, and then we're just going to get you even more on board so that you have what's called chosen a path, one of those 11 paths that we talked about.
Okay.
And then we'll get you started in the curriculum. It's if you're having fun and excited now, be ready for that times 100. It's about to get even better.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think I have a portal access. Might be I'm able to access. I'll check as per your instructions in the presentation. I'll follow that and I'll see.
Excellent. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
At this point now, I really do want to head to this open discussion, and I really want to explain this a little bit because I think that this explanation could really help us for this to go even more smoothly. First of all, I'm now going to change hats. So I was the person sort of answering these questions, and now I'm going to become a facilitator. It's not my intent to answer questions directly, but yet I sort of want to facilitate around the room. Unless you have a question for me directly, or if nobody does want to participate, I'm happy to do that, of course. But I really would love to hear your thoughts for us to sort of come together with our own ideas. So I kind of want to step back a little bit, listen for you, and then that way I can come forward and take action later on based upon the feedback and collaboration with us. So there are 3 topics that I'm hoping we can discuss. The first one is your positive experience within Pathways and Basecamp. I kind of described mine earlier. I'd love to hear yours. Can we add to that? Can you resonate with what I did say? Secondly, express your objections or opportunities for improvement. Harvey earlier had talked about some ideas. I don't know if I would call it an objection so much as sort of an idea to improve things, which is wonderful. That's why we're here. And really, I think it's really this category, his proposed solution or other ideas. And I extend that to everybody here, not just Harvey. And let's talk about some guidelines. Again, I will be facilitating this, but I'll be doing this with the chat master. Really, the way it's going to work is he's going to kind of notice whose hands doing what, raising their hands. And, that's the way to do this, to use the emoticons, I think they're called, to click on raise hand, which probably many of you know how to do. You can ask questions if that's not clear. And at that point, our Zoom master will say, hey, I noticed this person's hand is raised. Mr. Presenter, shall we go that way? And of course, I'll say affirmative. Really important on this. I really want to encourage us to use our table topic skills where we really learn to speak from 1 to 2 minutes, like in table topics. And you're going to see the Zoom master or the timing master, I think we're calling, you'll see that. You'll see the timing master will time, and they will display the green, yellow, and red indicators at 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. And then 2 minutes, you're into the red. And I definitely want to just get more participants in there. So I'm going to suggest if a participant exceeds their time into 3 minute, the Zoom master has been instructed to mute the participant to allow for more speakers. That is just so that, again, we can get more in there. This is kind of experimental. Maybe with a smaller number, it could be a bit much, but I do want to try it. If anything, it's practice for when we get 100 people interested in Pathways. Let's hope that's soon. So that's the rule that I would like to follow. And in a moment, I would love to hear if anybody has any particular questions on that. And I just say thank you in advance for your cooperation and participation with this. Before we actually head into the discussion, does anybody specifically have a question about the procedure? And I would like to clarify that if that's the case. Okay.
PJ was the first with his hand up.
Okay, we're heading into the open discussion.
Right.
Please, PJ.
Thank you. I just wanted to come in on a positive change I saw in Pathways. And I had that experience that you mentioned, Dave, about filling out an evaluation form and then saving it yeah, I even saved the form after I typed all the stuff in and then sent it to the person, and it was blank. And I opened it, and yes, in fact, it was blank. You do need to download that to your computer, save it to your computer, and then reopen it from your computer, type in it, and save. Now, the other thing I wanted to comment on was, where do you get that evaluation form? You don't have to go searching around in Pathways if your club uses free Toast. I don't know about EasySpeak, but they have added the evaluations into the speakers box on free Toast. If someone signs up to give a speech, as soon as they click on the drop down and enter the project number and or project and the level and the project ID, it will automatically put a link in the free Toast listing for you to just click as an evaluator. So you don't have to even log into Pathways. If you're assigned to evaluate, you just click on that link and it will automatically download the evaluation form that you need to evaluate your assigned speaker. That's just what I wanted to add, that little tip there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, PJ. Wonderful. I love this collaboration. Who's next, David?
Harvey is back.
Okay, Harvey, you already had a chance to give us a little bit of the material, so that's great. If you want to capitalize on that, sort of pick up where you left off, that could
Yeah, I'm
help.
gonna pick up. And basically, you work under the club coach. You're like a temporary member. You pay a nominal fee, maybe. You assign a low membership clubs, 2 to 5 clubs. You go in there. You become kind of a member. That helps that club increase their membership. In the meantime, you help fill the roles, kind of so people are not double rolling or 3 roles at a time. You can give speeches. You can help do the general value, Toastmaster, whatever. But then, but you can't be a club officer or a participate in a contest. So this is the whole help the club stay in as and prevent them from disbanding. Some of those members might disappear. You want to hold on to members. That's kind of the purpose of this. Once the club gets back on its feet, you're dropped off automatically. And then you go to another club. You can help out. You can have 1 to 10, whatever, what that person has time for. So that's what, that's my proposal. But you have to get TI approval on that.
Excellent. Thank you, Harvey. Does anybody have a specific comment on that? I have something to share if Harvey doesn't. I mean, if anybody doesn't, I would prefer to hear your thoughts. PJ. Oh yeah. I'm sorry, David.
Well,
that sounds good.
I'm not sure how far Harvey's gone with this proposal. From my understanding of how TI works, in order to have a club get credit for having you as a member, you've got to pay your membership dues. And you mentioned paying just a nominal amount. Maybe the way you could reduce that amount is to not pay the club portion of the dues, but you would definitely have to pay the TI portion of the dues to be a member of that club. Now, if you did pay the full dues, including the club portion, then of course you could compete in the contest and you could be a club officer. You would be a full-blown member. But the only way I could see where you would be a you're using the term pooled member, and I'll redefine that as a member with reduced privileges and rights, shall we say, where you would not be able to compete or be a club officer, and that would be if you did not pay the club dues. That would be my understanding. And now, if you can get TI to go along with this, sounds like a great idea. I think you're going to have an uphill battle, though, just from my experience. All right, those are my comments.
Thank you, PJ. Very good commentary. And David, who's next? Do you see?
I do not see any other raised hands.
I think Terry might have raised his hand. Should we go with Terry?
There we go, Terry. Okay, all right.
Great.
Oh,
Hi, Terry.
hi, Dave. Hey, thanks for putting this on.
Absolutely.
I wanted to learn more about the pooled membership. We're getting 8, 10, 12 people, and it's just not enough enthusiasm. And that pooled membership would really help our club at this time. I'd like to learn more about it.
That's great. I will say this, it's sort of in the idea formation stage at this point. It's literally just came up at this meeting, but I wonder if nobody else has their hand raised. I wonder if either Harvey or PJ would like to just share a little bit more about the concept.
Okay, basically, I'm trying to, heard from Tamsin that half the clubs in District 7 have less than 13 members, about 50%. This is mostly I think this would be more like an emergency basis because of COVID. Part of the problem is that COVID has really clamped down on some of these clubs. They can't get new members. They can't meet physically. This is just to help them out. This is like a temporary emergency procedure. It's just to help them out to prevent them from disbanding. Just to keep them going until this COVID crisis is over, and then they're able to get back to normal meeting and maybe pick up the membership, and then that person drops off, and then maybe help another club get on its feet. That's basically what it is.
Great. Thank you, Harvey. Excellent. Was that helpful, I hope, Terry?
Our Q&A timer has her hand up.
Okay, I'll assume that hopefully that was helpful, Terry. And yeah, would love to hear from our Q&A timer.
Well, Toastmasters, it's an interesting concept. I can see both sides of the coin. If I were Toastmasters, I would say dues are due. The amount due the TI is this amount. We're probably not going to give you guys a discount, but talking to them about something that's not necessarily going to cost them money might be the way to go, such as a club can be low for 2 or 3 due cycles, or at least be deemed low membership throughout the pandemic. And then the next due cycle after post-pandemic, then it moves to inactive. And then the next due cycle after that, which is a whole year after pandemic is over, then it moves to being removed as a club.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of asking for less dues money to TI, which they'll never go for, I would strongly recommend that you look at something in the terms of, please label the club low all the way through pandemic, and then please label the club inactive the next dues period after pandemic is done.
Great feedback. Thank you, Ellen. I think this is a wonderful discussion. I'm so glad Harvey brought up this idea. Wow, this is really starting to take shape. I'm certainly getting some ideas. And David, it looks like you specifically might have some things to share.
Well, I do in this case. This would require an amendment basically to your bylaws addendum is what it's called for the club. So it wouldn't be hard to write. I could do it in one sentence, I think, but you would have to write something into the addendum so that the ones who are actually paying the dues for the club dues would not feel offended and would not raise an objection or stink. Back to you, Dave.
Excellent, thank you. And I assume you're talking about for the club dues. Is that correct, David?
Right, just club dues.
I see. Yes. Yeah. Great commentary. And I think that is a location that many of us may or may not get to on a regular basis, which is that addendum of standard club operations or something like that, and within your Club Central as a club officer. Thank you for that. There does seem to be a question in the chat, and I don't know if that's something that Terry would like to bring up in the discussion. I think it says something to the effect of how can our club help within the do, learn, teach? Did you want to bring that up in the discussion at all, Terry?
Well, it was interesting you included that in your presentation. That was a well done presentation. I liked your graphics. That was well done. Thank you, Dave.
Oh, great. Thank you, Terry. I'm glad that was helpful. Excellent.
And the fail safe, a safe place to fail.
Yes.
Big theme. And the Zoom master, I really like how the D7, our district, handles the graphics, the Zoom master. That is a full-time role, and it should be defined and assigned.
And we have a fabulous one. As a matter of fact, she could even be on this call. She does an
I
excellent
was
job.
thinking, just keeping the club alive temporarily, because 8 people are not enough participants to really get the energy going.
Yep.
We're getting Zoom fatigued. And I like the pooled membership idea as a temporary get through this COVID period.
That's amazing.
We could, like 5 people pop in on our club would make a big difference.
Yes, yes.
And if we could get a rotation of members that would sign up as a mentorship leadership and cycle through these Zoom meetings while we have them. How many people here, raise your hand if you've gone on an international Toastmaster club? Because all the clubs are online. Okay, we have David did. Who else has gone far and wide? Quite a few people. I've been threatening and I've never done it, and I've been unfulfilled. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Terry. And then this is going to unfortunately be the last one. We're at 7:57 almost, and I want to end on time for you guys, and I have a couple of closing comments, but we can certainly continue this forward. If you have further questions, we do have information available. I want to say this, for anybody that might be interested, we're just starting this idea, but I am trying to put on what's called a Train the Trainer program, and it is not designed so much that I think that I'm the guru and everybody has to learn from me. It's more like, how can we come together on a unified set of principles on how we teach this stuff and what the fundamentals are. It just so happens I'm trying to put something like that together. If anybody would like to collaborate, I'm just calling it Train the Trainer. Lori, the program quality director, and I have been talking about this. Secondly, if you have general support for pathways needs, please reach out. And then finally, as Lori, our program quality director, talked about, there are going to be every month Learning Lab monthly pathway sessions. They're always on Wednesdays, and they're from 7 to 8 p.m., but they're once a month. These are the dates. The next one, perhaps if you want to just be aware of this, it's October 13th. And then these are all the other days that will be taking place in that regard. And again, you'll be getting a copy of these slides. If you registered, I'll make a point of sending you a copy of the slides. Although if you want to reach out to me individually, I'd love to hear from you. And I just want to say thank you for attending, your contribution. This is a quote that I really like. Learn to be thankful for what you already have while you pursue all that you want. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure and an honor. And I'll hand it back to our Toastmaster, David, to close the meeting.
Well, thank you, Dave. It's been informative, and having that open session allows us to explore new ideas. And we need new ideas to overcome the COVID situation, and more to come, I'm sure. Now that I know what I can do in asking new questions, I'm gonna load it up. So I'll see everybody at the next session on October 13th.
Excellent. This meeting is adjourned right on time at 8 p.m. That is so exciting. It's so cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody being here. So I'm going to stay on if anybody wants to just experience fellowship together. Ellen or David, could you stop the recording at this point?